Good evening and welcome once again to another program of Issues in the News, where we discuss the important events that would have taken place in our country over the past week or so. And as the norm, I want to take this opportunity to welcome each and every one of you. I want to take this opportunity to welcome all of our viewers and followers on Facebook, joining us by the thousands right across the length and breadth of Guyana, as well as across the Caribbean, North America, Europe, and further afield. And I also want to take this opportunity to welcome our listeners who are joining us on Freedom Radio from Rob Street, Georgetown. This is another program of Issues in the News where we are discussing the important political events that are taking place in our country. And I want to begin today with GECOM. As you are aware, a meeting concluded today of GECOM, and there has been no positive development. So it would appear as though another week will pass by and there is no update, no optimism, what I'm running out of words, which is not something that's normal. No positive update is emanating from GECOM. The commissioners continue to haggle over what data should be used, over whether the house-to-house data should be used, the time frame that it will take to use the data, and the chairperson of GECOM seemed to be presiding over these pontifications, and our constitution continues to bleed, and the people of this country continue to be denied an elections within the constitutionally prescribed time frame. So another week is passing us and there is no positive indication from GECOM which can give the Guyanese people an indication when the long constitutionally due elections are going to be held. In the meanwhile, the government continues to occupy office illegally. The cabinet continues to make decisions illegally, and the government continues to spend taxpayers' dollars illegally. That is the state of affairs, unfortunately, in Guyana. Also today, what was made available at GECOM was the results of the house-to-house registration process. And the results are staggering. I have them here, beginning from region 1 to 10, and I have the aggregate number of alleged registration done in each region. And it is amazing. Before I get to this, I want to remind you that the contention of the government, the contention of the PNC, and the contention of the government commissioners at GECOM was that the current list of electors is bloated. Recall them saying that it was bloated by some over 240,000 names. Well, that list stands at just over 600,000. That is the current list of electors stand at approximately just over 600,000 registered electors. And the contention is that list is bloated. Now, listen to me carefully. In the normal course of things, in the past, when we did house-to-house registration, it took over 15 months. So in the past, when we did house-to-house registration, it took approximately 15 months to register the whole country. It took 15 months, and we ended up and that was done in 2000, that was done in 1990, just before 1992. It was done in 1997. It was done in 2001. It was done in 2008. And on each occasion, it took approximately 15 months to register the entire country. And that final data in terms of the list that we ended up with, a list of electors, was just over 600,000. And that, the government said, is bloated by some 240,000. So I want you to listen to me carefully. It took us 15 months to accumulate that list, and that list is 600,000, and they are saying that that list is bloated by some 240,000. Well, in 6 weeks, in an exercise that the PPP supporters boycotted, which means that approximately half of the population boycotted, in 6 weeks, they did 370,822 registration. So in 6 weeks, from July the 20th to August the 31st, they were able to do 370,822 transactions, registration transactions, in areas where half of the population boycotted this exercise. And that's only in 6 weeks. Imagine if they were going to take the full period of 15 months and the PPP participated, they will end up with a list of over 2 million if this is what they were able to accumulate in 6 weeks with half of the population boycotting it. They were still able to get 370,822 in 6 weeks. Had they continued for 12 months or 15 months, which is the normal time it has taken to do house-to-house registration in Guyana, the last 4 times it was done, then we would have ended up with a list, I don't know, over 2 million, 3 million. That is why this data is dangerously flawed. This data that the GECOM commissioners, the government commissioners, are fighting to be inputted and to be used is deeply flawed, deeply erroneous, dangerously erroneous. This could never be correct. It could never be correct. In this, you have deep flawed. Imagine, let me just call out some places. At Charity, they were able to register 15, at Anna Regina, 15,000 people. Anna Regina is a PPP base. Anna Regina people boycotted the exercise, and they were able to register 15,893. Let me go again. Let's look at another place. Parika. This is another PPP stronghold. They were able to, these people boycotted the exercise. They were able to register 24,697. Let me see it again. Let's go again. Lagrange, another PPP area. 21,172. Lagrange, 21,172. These people don't live in Lagrange. Where Lagrange getting this kind of numbers from? And this is a PPP area where the people boycotted the exercise, and I have the whole list going down. I have the entire list from now region number 1 to region number 10, the areas that they claim that they did. Let me see. Let me see another area. Corriverton. Corriverton, that will cover the whole Crabwood Creek area. Corriverton. Corriverton. 19,252 registration transactions were done in an area that is predominantly PPP and where the people boycotted. Where do they get these numbers from? Where are they getting these numbers from? And that is why that figure of 370,822 must be deeply erroneous and dangerously flawed. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. I suppose this information will be made public in due course, and you will get an opportunity. The statisticians, the political analysts, and the political worker will get an opportunity, because we know this country. We are all election workers. I have been in the system for a long time now. I have worked at several elections, so I know the areas as good as most people. And these statistics that I'm looking at here are deeply flawed, deeply flawed. They are padded and they are bloated, and if these statistics are used for electoral purposes, then there will not be free and fair elections in Guyana. And I want to make that very, very clear. That's my personal opinion, based upon what I have seen and based upon what I know. And that is why, ladies and gentlemen, there is so much energy and so much effort being expended at GECOM by the government commissioners, and so much effort being expended by the government to get GECOM to use this data. That is why. Now, they had discussions today on the time frames that it will take to input the data, to cross-reference it, and each of the transaction now has to be personally verified. Each transaction. That, ladies and gentlemen, will take months. And we don't even have I am told that we do not even have the technological capacity in Guyana to do it. And that's why they are exploring other countries. They are looking at Jamaica, and they are looking at other jurisdictions. Do you know how long it will take? Jamaica are already to print some couple thousand ID cards. They say they will take several months to do a couple thousand ID cards. That is the state of play. And all of this can be simply avoided if they put this matter to a vote and the chairman vote in the correct way. And what is the correct way? What is the logical path? What is the legal thing to do in the circumstances, having regard to the fact that elections are overdue? Is to do exactly what Lowenfield said, which is to refresh the list that expired on the 30th of April and hold a suitable claim and objection period or cycle and go to the elections. And all of this shenaniganism and wickedness can be avoided. But no, they are afraid of that list, that very list that catapulted them into a majority in 2011, the same list that catapulted them into government in 2015, the same list that was used for 2 local government elections. They are running from that list like death. They don't want to use that list. And that is why they want to contaminate the database. They want to contaminate the database with these kinds of deficient statistical data That is the big fight now. They want to contaminate the database with these inaccuracies, because you know and they know that they can't win an elections freely and fairly. They can't. Not based on performance. Not based on anything. Not based on corruption. Whichever ground you want to judge them on, whichever factor you want to use, be it performance of the economy, be it competence in office, be it corruption, be it accountability, be it transparency, be it performance of commerce and business, they fail on every front. They fail on every front. They have not, the only platform promise that they have delivered, as far as I can recall as I sit here, is the holding of local government elections. It is the only platform promise that they have delivered to the people of this country. So what do they go back and say? They said that they will not close sugar. They close sugar. They say that they will not raise taxes. They impose 200% taxes. They say that they will end blackout. Last night the entire country had blackout. They say that they will deal with the crime situation. The crime situation has gotten worse. They say that they will improve the economy. The economy has gotten bad to worse. And I can go on. They say that they will end discrimination. It has gotten worse. They say that they will fight corruption. It has gotten 10 times worse. And that is the reality of Guyana. And they can't talk away with that. They can't hide that from the people. So that is where the struggle is now. And I said, while I am not a pessimist, I am not delusional either. And while I am an optimist, I am not foolishly optimistic. So I know that we are going to have a long struggle to have elections. It was always going to be this. Fortunately, the no confidence motion started the struggle earlier. But when the 5-year would have come to an end, had it not been for the no confidence motion, we would have had the same struggle. We would have had the same struggle. Our government, life was terminated as well from 5 years to 3 years in 2001, when Justice Claudette Singh ruled that the 1997 elections were null and void. That 97 government, its life came to an end in 2000. You recall that? And we had to go to an election in 2001. And we had 3 months to do so. That is what Justice Singh ordered, the very Justice Claudette Singh. She ordered that we must go to the elections in 3 months. And 3 months, GECOM was ready. We didn't have to quibble about house to house and all this foolishness, these manufactured excuses that are being doled out one after another. We went to the elections in 3 months and we won again. Because we were confident. We delivered in our promises. The people are on our side. But not them. They can't go to the elections. They won by fluke, and they are praying to God that they are able to pull off some type of fraud so that they can stay in power for another 5 years. Because only by fraud and artifice can they be able to win an elections. They cannot win an elections freely and fairly because they have failed to deliver. Their own supporters are fed up with them, are tired of them, and would like to see the back of them. And that is the truth. That is the reality. But tonight I also want to deal with a campaign promise that they made, and which is always an issue for topical discussion in our society. And that issue is constitutional reform. Now, you would recall that the AFC in particular campaigned on the platform of constitutional reform. They said that once they get into a government, they will ensure that there are massive and wide-ranging constitutional reform taking place. The APNU, when the two parties coalesced, they made that a 100-day promise, constitutional reform. And constitutional reform is something that should be an ongoing exercise. In fact, in 2001, when we reformed the Constitution, that exercise was not completed, but we had to go to an elections, and it was decided that the exercise would end temporarily at that time, and that a standing committee of constitutional reform will be established by the very Constitution and will sit in the Parliament continuously and will continue the work of constitutional reform. That was the arrangement. But this government, so I want to make the point that constitutional reform is an ongoing process. You have to constantly and continuously keep looking at your constitution, look at the deficiencies in your governmental structure, in your constitutional structure, in your legal structure, and strive to improve it by way of legal reform and constitutional reform. So it is an ongoing exercise. Speaking for the PPP, while we were in government, we did the most wide-ranging constitutional reform in the history of Guyana. And that is the 1999-2001 constitutional reform exercise that we engaged in. And let me talk a little about that, because people don't understand these things, and I hear all kinds of uninformed and uneducated statements being made. The PPP did not engineer those reforms. The PPP government in 1999 did not take the lead in those reforms. What the PPP government did was to establish a constitutional reform commission. And that commission, the PPP ensured, was a very broad-based commission. It comprised of all the political parties in the parliament at the time. It comprised of all the political parties in the parliament at the time. It was chaired by Ralph Ramkaran, and the deputy chairman, I think, was Haslin Paris, with Derek Bernard being the secretary and Rupert Rupnarayan being the assistant secretary, and there was an entire secretariat established. Attached to the commission were advisors, former chancellors of the judiciary of Guyana. You had former judges in South Africa, former judges of India. They were all retained as consultants. And then the commission itself was made up not only of the political parties, but it was made up of representations or representatives from every conceivable important interest group in this country. So you had the Amerindians, they were represented. You had the religious people, they were represented. You had Hindus, Muslims, Christians, they were all represented. You had the trade union movement, they were represented. The private sector commission, they were represented. The farmers, they were represented. The trade unions, I said before, they were represented. The Guyana Bar Association, they were represented. And every conceivable interest group in the country had a representative on that commission. And that commission held over 100 public hearings right across the length and breadth of Guyana. It held public hearings in every region, in as far as possible every major community. And it spoke to the people, and it engaged the people in this exercise of consultation. And the people told the commission what they wanted to change in the Constitution. That process took nearly 3 years, and it produced nearly 197 recommendations. 197 recommendations that became constitutional amendments, and they were all put into the Constitution unanimously in the Parliament. And that is how you do constitutional reform. So no one can complain about unfairness. The PNC was there, the PPP was there, the UF was there, the WPA was there, Ravi Dev was there. All the political parties at the time, all the major sectors of the society had a representative, and then they all went to the people right across the length and breadth of this country, consulted with them, took their views on board, and out of that produced 197 amendments to the 1980 Burnham Constitution. So when people are calling this constitution Burnham Constitution, it's wrong. This is not Burnham Constitution. Nearly 200 changes were made to the Burnham Constitution, which produced this constitution that we currently have. And every single politician at the time had an input, and every single Guyanese was afforded an opportunity to have an input in that constitution that we now have. But significantly, this APNU AFC promised the people that they are uncomfortable with this constitution, that they will change it. And they promised to do that within 100 days of being elected to government. 100 days. Well, 4 years have passed, and not one single amendment. Not one single amendment. This is what they did. When they got into government, after they were severely criticized, about a year after, Prime Minister Moses Nagamotu was given the portfolio of constitutional reform. This fella has very little dignity and shame. After heading the newspaper, Chronicle, and I don't know what else, they gave him this portfolio of constitutional reform. Well, of course, he likes the camera. So there was a big photograph of him that he got $20 million from the Parliament, and he appointed a constitutional reform committee to advise the government on constitutional reform. Nigel Hughes, I think Gino Prasad, and somebody else. Professor Lachman, Professor Harold Lachman were appointed, the 3 persons. Gino Prasad, who is now a judge, Nigel Hughes, and Professor Lachman. They apparently took a year They spent $20 million and they produced a report that nobody has ever seen. Not me, as the shadow person for constitution in the parliament, not the leader of the opposition. Nobody ever saw that document. It was handed to the Prime Minister, and we don't know whether it's a blank document or not. Of course, the Prime Minister used the opportunity, had another Kodak moment, and that was splashed on the front page of the Chronicle, and no one has ever seen or heard from that document again, or about that document. For 1 year, we don't know what those three persons did because they did not consult with anyone in Guyana, as far as I'm aware, at least organizationally. I don't know if they talked to individuals, but in terms of consulting with major organizations in Guyana, they did not do so. They did not consult, I could tell you with certainty, they did not consult the People's Progressive Party, which is the largest opposition party, the only opposition party, the largest singular political party in Guyana. They did not consult with the PPP. So that was done. And then we never hear back anything. We never heard back anything about that document. Then when more pressure started to come, they put Basil Williams to chair they started a constitutional reform committee in the parliament. As I said, there's a standing committee there. Well, they got Basil Williams to call a couple meetings. And that is after intense criticism came after their third year in government, and there was no movement. Then in the third year, Basil Williams tried to do something in the parliament, and then blaming myself and Priya Manikchand for the committee not functioning. We are not in government. We don't control the committee. We don't have a majority in the committee. The government has promised constitutional reform. The APNU, AFC promised constitutional reform. They must deliver it to the people. Don't use us as excuse. If I don't go to the committee, that means the government work must not be done. I don't work for the government. I represent the people of this country. I don't work for the government. So I don't have to be there to get the government agenda done. They have to get their own agenda done. But they are incompetent. And you know, Basil Williams, every time he loses a case, he blames someone. When he can't get a job done, he blames someone. So at the Pegasus, at the Marriott the other day, when we were having that AmCham discussion, you heard him say that Manikchand and myself are the reasons why they couldn't do constitutional reform. Could you believe this guy? 5 years. This is their 4th or 5th year in government. They promised to do something in 100 days. They have done nothing and then blame the PPP. What we have to do with that? We didn't promise anybody constitutional reform in 100 days. But that is one of the platform promises that they failed to deliver. One of the almost all that they failed to deliver, that's one of them. And they have no idea on how to proceed. They have no idea on how to proceed on constitutional reform. You see, constitutional reform seems to be a sexy thing. Anybody who wants to sound intelligent and so on, they go and they parrot that we need to reform the Constitution. We need constitutional reform. As though constitutional reform is the panacea of all the ills of the society. That is how they none of them, I've always asked them, I'm not against constitutional reform. I believe constitutional reform is a constant, ongoing process that must be continued. But you can't keep parroting you want constitutional reform without putting something out in paper. Put something out on paper so that we can analyze it. Constitutional reform can be capricious, whimsical. It can be a knee-jerk thing. You have to reason this thing out. You have to examine whether what you're changing is not going to be worse than what you have. You have to look at what that change is and look at other countries to see where it has been put into force and what improvements it brought or what consequences it had in those particular countries. You don't do constitutional reform in abstract. You don't do it whimsically and fancifully. And not a single one of the protagonists of constitutional reform in Guyana has ever produced a paper, detailing what they plan to propose. None. There are a few, one or two hodgepodge suggestions that are being made in articles in the newspaper. But that's not how it is done. Draft it. And look, when you implement it, look at what will happen because implementing some of the recommendations I have seen will mean that we will have to remove some of the current provisions. Because, for example, this thing about power sharing and so on, that's a very sexy thing. Every person wants to talk about that because it sounds popular. But none of them will tell you who will be the opposition, who will provide the oversight that the opposition provides, who will do the job of an opposition in recommending people to sit on the Judicial Service Commission and all the various oversight commissions. That's the role of the opposition. Who will oversight the government when all the politicians are in the government? Who will protect the people of Guyana against such a government that you are empowering and you're making all powerful? Because all the politicians want power sharing. Everybody wants to be in the government. Well, when everybody goes into the government, who will be the opposition? When that government decides to turn on the people of this country or a person, what will happen to that person? To whom will he go for representation? Who will be appointing judges? The government will appoint all the judges? How the people of this country will get justice? How would judicial independence be guaranteed? We have to think these things out. And that's a problem I find with non-lawyers. They love to talk about law and about constitution. You ever hear me talk about medicine? You ever hear me talk about engineering? Or even economics? No. I stick to my area. But you have all kinds of people want to talk about law. And I don't mean to disrespect anybody, but law is a discipline that you got to understand. And you have to have some training in before you can speak competently on the matter, like any given science. But, we have all kinds of people who want to express legal opinions. My phone is back up, so if you are seeing the number on the screen, yes, you see, but the phone is up so we can take your calls. I was not able to do so for a number of weeks because the phone line was down, but the phone is up and running, and we are going to engage you shortly in conversations. Now, as you know, the People's Progressive Party is holding countrywide meetings, community meetings, bottom house meetings, street corner meetings right across the country because we believe we are not a party who think that we must only go to the people at elections time. We have been in constant contact with you all year round, and we are doing it once again. Tomorrow afternoon, I will be at Clifton, Port Morant, on the quarantine. I am not going to be at the Lower Down. I'm not going to be at 72 or at 69 or somewhere there where I was scheduled to be, apparently. I am going to be at Clifton, Port Morant, at a meeting there. So I'm asking all of you who are looking at the program, you can come to that meeting and we are going to talk in person about the very important things that require our attention and our discussions. Well, the phone has begun to go, so I will invite callers now. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Yeah, I'm calling to say this list, this new list that this GECOM people had was registering people with. What would we get? The old list and this new list, and see what the old list look like and how many people from how many different regions is on the list so that we can verify it and try to clean off this list.
All right, caller. Thank you. We have to understand it is so unfortunate that the people of this country got to go through all this contortion and confusion. There is only one list, madam. There is only one list called the voters list, and there is a national register. All right? And the law says that it can only be one of those. One list of electors, one list of registrants. All right? Called a national register. What they were trying to do was to create a new one. And the judge said they cannot do that. They were trying to create a new database and throw away all the existing information. The judge said that they can't do that. Now they are trying to use the data that they collected to put it into the new list, into the existing list. And we are contending, based upon available evidence, that the data obtained is deeply flawed and should not be used. Caller, you're on the air.
Yes, hello, good evening.
Good evening, sir. Yes?
Yes, Anil Nandlall. Please tell Anil Nandlall that he's doing an excellent job. Let him keep the struggle going.
Thank you.
Right? Keep the struggle going. I want to know this is an overseas call. But I have a very important question. From all those serious allegations that are selling citizenship against vote, if the PPP get back into power, are you guys going to investigate those false allegations?
Oh, look, what? Yes, let me, all right, thank you. Thank you, caller. Which country are you calling me from?
I'm calling from Bermuda, and I'm going to listen off here. Keep the struggle going. As our leader say, the father of the nation, the struggle will be long, but the victory going to be at the end.
Thank you very much from Bermuda, sir. And I'm going to deal with the issue. Thank you. What we see going on at the Ministry of Citizenship is not only against the laws of Guyana, but we are seeing the violation of international law. Mr. Felix, the minister, told the country on a television program that the Haitians are entering Guyana legally and are leaving by the thousands illegally, going on to Brazil and over to Suriname. And this guy says this thing nonchalantly. He says it blissfully, not appreciating what he is disclosing to the world. If your country is being used as a transshipment point for people smuggling, alien smuggling, then that is an international crime. That is a crime against humanity internationally. That's a violation of the Charter of the United Nations. And here it is that our minister, blissfully and without recognizing, and of course his Attorney General doesn't know better, is disclosing to the world that, look, don't worry, I know that the Haitians are coming here legally. I know that. I also know that they are coming here only to pass through to go to another country. Well, that makes Guyana guilty because the minister knows that these people are entering the country in order to violate the laws of another country. And that by itself is a serious international wrong. So, yes, sir. And we also have information that these persons are being smuggled into Guyana, and there are people in the government who are complicit in the operation, that tens of thousands of US dollars are being paid, and they're being smuggled out of Guyana, Some of them are staying, but some of them are also being smuggled out. And when one looks at the uniformity of the process, the formality of the process, because you have ministry officials are receiving these people. They are being put into minibuses and dropped off at various buildings across Guyana. You know that this thing is centrally organized, and there seem to be governmental involvement. Because how ministry people are there in the airport, I saw that. I came in many times from Panama City, and they traveled with me on the plane. And when I arrived at Cherry Jagan International Airport, I see them being escorted by persons in government uniform and taken to a different part of the airport where they are apparently being processed. This is not hearsay. This is what I have seen. And I can speak authoritatively on what I have seen. And then the minister tells us with a straight face that yes, they are being smuggled into other countries illegally. And he doesn't understand that he's exposing us to international sanctions. So the phones are going, and I would like to invite your participation. Please be brief and be as clear as you can. Caller, you're in the air.
Yes, good night, Mr. Nandlall.
Hello.
Yes, good night, Mr. Nandlall.
Yes.
Yes, I'm calling concerning MMA. Gave announced notice today. Millions of dollars to one farmer that could only 40 acres.
And this is for what?
Land rates and rent.
But you know, comrade, that I have had meetings with the farmers on the west coast of Berbice. Also, the RPA, Comrade Siraj, has had meetings, and we have advised you not to pay the increase. I have said to you that the increase is unlawful. They tried to do a similar thing at Hope Estate. And I advised the farmers to ignore them. They took the farmers to court. And I represented the farmers and won all the cases. About 30-something cases, 30-something farmers. But if you do not cooperate with me, then I can't help you. All right?
So I would say,
Right, so
the normal 350.
that's correct. And all the farmers from the MMA scheme who are listening to me, I am advising you, do not pay the increase. Let them take you to court, and I will represent you. We will represent you in the courts. All right?
Yes, but it's not noticed today, and they claim that if you have to pay legal fees and all threatening things they put on the letter.
No, let them do that. Let them take you to court, and we will deal with it in the court of law. All right?
Okay, thank you very kindly.
Thank you very much, sir. So MMA is at it again. They are not providing basic services to the people. Their services have deteriorated significantly. They are bankrupt. And for doing less, they are charging more. When they were charging less, they were doing more. Now they want to increase their fees to $15,000 from $3,500, and they are not doing. They can't clean the canals. They're not clearing the dams. They're not assisting the farmers in any way. Caller, you're on the air.
Yep. Good night, sir.
Good night.
Sir, I got a problem. I come from the bush 2 days ago, and my family needed to register. So I don't know what I know.
All right, caller, thank you. There is going to be a claims and objection period. All the persons who have not been registered will have to be registered during that period. All right? Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, good night, boss.
Good night.
I called the
How are you doing?
All right. And we are putting a lot here because what happened really, right? We used to pay $12,000 a year for the rent, and now they raised the park to 8,000, and they're not doing nothing for us here.
Who raised the rent?
National Survey
When that happened?
last year.
But remember, did I not come in there and we agreed that you will not pay any increase in rents?
Well, we not pay, but I said I was if we put you out of the land because it's leased land.
All right, well, let them take you to court. They can't put you out of the land just like that. They have to take you to court. When they take you to court, we will represent you.
Okay, our next thing, what's going on with this election?
I can't answer that question now. I've been talking whole night about it.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you.
Every day, every minute of the day, every time I come out of my office, every time I go to the court, if I go to the market, if I go to a wake house, if I go anywhere I go, that's the question I have to answer. When is elections? And I really don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. And that is an amazing phenomenon in 2019 in the modern world, that nobody can say when elections are going to be held in Guyana, although everyone knows that elections are long due. Nobody can say when elections going to be held. Very, very strange, bizarre. Caller, you're on the air.
Hello, Mr. Nandlall. Cannot hear your program. You need to turn up your volume.
You cannot hear me?
Yes.
I am sorry, I'm talking very, very loud here. I don't know.
I
Some,
cannot hear you. You can live on Facebook and I cannot hear you.
maybe something is wrong with your Facebook, man. I'm hoping that I am hearing, people are hearing me, because I don't know what else I can do. The caller, you're in the air.
Good night.
Hello.
Good night.
Good night.
I'm saying that they should not be north. I agree with that. It is totally wrong. Anybody with IT sense would know that, and I'm surprised that the chairman is not doing as is required, and that we're not getting election. It is tired enough set up. The international body is saying nothing.
Yeah, that's correct. And, thank you, caller. When we were in government, I keep making this point and I'll make it one more time. And President Ramotar had prorogued the parliament, which was a constitutional mechanism available to him, as was done in Canada, as was done by Prime Minister Johnson this week in England. He prorogued the parliament. When President Ramotar did that in 2014, every day a different diplomat used to come to put pressure on him to call off the prorogation. The opposition was jumping up and down the country, screaming that it is illegal. Now they are violating the Constitution, and I am not seeing the same kind of response from the international community. Caller, you're on the air.
Hello?
Yes?
Hello, good night, sir.
Once you call in, be prepared to make your presentation. Time is precious and we can't afford to waste time. So as soon as you call and I answer, please make the point that you wish to make. Caller, you're on the air.
Hello, good night.
Yes?
That man was actually just now. He's a mental and totally madman. You not attack hard as you boy attack that. One of them people is they want to complicate our argument.
All right, caller. Thank you. Where you calling me from?
72.
Oh, 72. All right, thank you. Thank you. That caller is defending me. Caller, you're here?
Yes, I want to find out something.
Yes.
There is a law like for the president and the cabinet, the minister can be jailed. Because they break the law from top coming down the constitution, they break.
Anybody can go to jail once that person is convicted of committing a criminal offense. There are certain laws, if you violate them, they do not constitute criminal offenses. You understand? Unfortunately, if you violate the Constitution, it is not a crime. You have to violate a criminal law before the sanctions of imprisonment is imposed. Caller, you're on the air.
Hello, good night, sir.
Good night. Where are you calling me from?
I'm calling from Borbis.
What part?
Fort Farm, sir.
Okay.
Sometime ago, I read in the paper that you filed suit against the president and ordered him that he has to.
Yes, I have filed an action against the president and the entire cabinet, asking the judge to either order them to resign or to give effect to their resignation, which took place on the 21st of December 2018. That case is currently before Chief Justice and will come up for hearing on the Monday coming. All right?
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yes. So that's good. Let me remind you, the case is fixed for Monday for hearing. It shouldn't take long because there is no complicated issue there at all. The Constitution says that the cabinet, including the president, must resign on the passing of a no confidence motion. A no confidence motion was passed since last December. Caller, you're in the air.
Hello, Mr. Nandlall.
Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm calling. Concerning the no confidence motion, the election was due 3 months after, right?
Yes.
Now, the court orders was short here. So, I am of the opinion that this government, for any confusion, it should have been prisoners in our constitution. Because that is something for me that is infringing on the rights of the citizens of the country.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're correct. Elections are supposed to be held 3 months after the passage of a no confidence motion.
Yes.
But the government is not complying. And
Yeah.
the people of the country have available certain things. One, they can vote them out definitely at the next elections, but they're not holding the next elections. So we may have to now consider alternative options to get them to hold elections.
Oh, okay.
All right?
All right, Mr. Nana, but I am old now, so I may not be wrong, but I would like to see when this condition being amended to make it treasonous for the government to disobey.
Okay. Where are you calling me from?
From Borbis, sir.
Wait, what part?
Westport. I will see you tomorrow.
Oh, all right. I am at Clifton tomorrow.
Yes, I heard that. I'll be there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yes, we'll take one more call. The operator is signaling to me. Caller, you're on the air. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, caller.
Good night.
Good night, sir.
I want to ask you, sir, why the clandestine operate with the court police?
I have asked the same questions.
The highest court passed the order done already. Things ain't going the way it should be going.
Yes, caller, I'm hearing you.
Want to reply to me, sir?
Thank you. The caller wants to know why Justice Claudette Singh, retired, the chairman of GECOM, is not complying with the order of the highest court in the land? Well, I don't know. What I can tell you, caller, is that she is bound to follow it. But they are not following it. You see, if all of us decide to disobey court orders from tomorrow, then the country falls apart. But we are expected to lead from the bottom, whereas the position supposed to be that they are supposed to lead and set the example to us. But anyway, that's another matter for another night's discussion. This is where I have to say thank you very much for joining me over the past 55 minutes. The phone is back on, so we will continue to have our lively exchanges, and it is a pleasure to have spoken to so many of you this evening. So until we meet again next Tuesday, please take care and have a restful week. Good evening and